Now you gotta hold it one more time.
There you go.
Oh, thanks. Tried that like 3
There you
times.
go. You have green. Let go. There you go. I'll say.
All
right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June meeting of the Groton Complete Streets Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, starting with a roll call. We'll start down on this end.
Greg Hanover, Director of Public Works.
Lori Henderson, committee member.
Brian Kent, Chair.
Tom Olson, Secretary.
Cindy Berry, Ledgelight Health District.
Patrice Granatowski, member.
Next up, approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes as presented in the agenda.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, Tom, for putting together the minutes. All right, let's start with some new business on the Gold Star Bridge bike ped pathway public information meeting that was held this past Monday night. I attended in person. Lori attended in person, Tom. Cindy virtually, you missed it. Okay, so you get to hear about it.
Well, everybody's here.
Well, true, but Greg gets to hear about
I
it.
did not attend, no.
Okay, and our friends at FHI get to hear about it. All right. So just a quick rewind, the Connecticut Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board has been asking DOT what they're going to do about the pathway on the Gold Star Bridge for, I think, about 4 years now. And it has been a very slow moving process that went for honestly years at a time without any reports on anything happening until eventually there was a feasibility study conducted on the northbound span, which is the other bridge, which is getting the full renovation project starting up next year, I believe. And that feasibility study indicated that a pathway could be put on that side, but it would be a very expensive and it would have traffic impacts, many exits south that could impact safety and performance of the bridge. So then the next step was to look at the southbound span, which is where the pathway has landed. And eventually it started to pick up a lot of intensity following the Federal Department of Transportation's grant to Connecticut of, I believe it was $189 million for to assist the overall bridge renovation project. And that really seemed to light a fire underneath the multi-use path project, because the condition, as I understand, of that grant was that a fully compliant up to current specification multi-use path would be included in the project. And so sort of relatively quickly, the design came to be on the southbound span. And what it does is it removes on-ramp and off-ramp redundant lanes. So there are 2 on and 2 off-ramp lanes on the southbound span. One comes out of the city of Groton, one goes down onto Route 32 on its way, north. And those are really unnecessary. There's no current need. There's no future forecast that they are really needed. And in fact, they tend to create some lane merging hazards. And I think the crash and fire last year on the bridge, which happened in that on-ramp double lane, also helped to solidify this as justifiable. And I think there's a part of the span in the center where a single ramp lane or single exit lane is eliminated, but there are 2 of those up there. So it really doesn't impact the performance of the vehicle throughput on the bridge, and it just takes over this redundant space and gives it to bicycles and pedestrians, creating a 14-foot wide shared use pathway, which is unprecedented. I mean, it's really amazing that in Connecticut, where this kind of project has never happened, vehicle lanes are given up for bike ped, and $55 million projected at this point is going towards a single project. So in addition to that, the pathway down into New London will be widened to 10 feet. It'll land on Bailey Circle, and then DOT is proposing a spur to William Street. On the Groton side, it'll basically mirror what's existing, but be wider and become ADA compliant, not as steep. And then where it ends up at Bridge Street in the city will be a roundabout to take the place of this really large four-way or five-way intersection. I think it ends up being down there that is traffic signal controlled, and there are a lot of safety issues down there now. So a roundabout with proper pathways and crossings will be a big improvement there. So that was the nature of the meeting on Monday night. I submitted testimony representing by Groton, but my comments had to do with the need for adequate lighting on the bike path, for wayfinding signage, and perhaps some kind of mile marker system on the bridge, so that if you're up there walking or biking and you have an emergency, you can let emergency services know where you are, or someone else can let them know where you are on the bridge, because it is a mile-long bridge. So just saying I'm up here on the bridge doesn't necessarily help them find you. So that's the report on that project. The schedule on it, I should mention also, is daunting. The renovation of the northbound span will close that bridge entirely for 3 years. Did you hear that correctly too? 3 years? That's what I recall here.
Well, yeah, the 3 years part is for when they shift the lanes over.
Yeah.
They're gonna be shifted for 3 years because
Right.
they have to do the two halves, a year and a half for each rehab.
Right.
So
So-
they're replacing the whole deck.
Right, so that northbound, what you currently drive along when you're going north from New London to Groton, that bridge will be out of service for 3 years.
Yeah.
Meaning
Well,
all traffic,
Half of it at a time, though.
Well, yeah, but yeah, 2 of the 4 lanes are gonna remain on one half, and the other 2 lanes are gonna be on the southbound side. So, for 2
Okay.
years.
okay.
Yeah, they're not shutting the whole bridge down for.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
No.
all right, so that, glad you cleared that up, because I
Yeah.
but
misunderstood
it
that.
will be, the southbound is going to have reduced flow on it.
Yes,
Correct.
correct,
Because they're still keeping the 4 northbound lanes, but they're going down to 3 southbound lanes from the current 4.
gotcha.
So
Yeah.
there's 3
Yeah.
southbound.
So anyway, it is what it is. So once that work is completed and the northbound span is back in full service, then the bike path starts construction, and that's scheduled for 2028. Spring of, or beginning of 2028, and completing fall of 29. So a year and a half construction period, during which time there will be no access for bike peds over that bridge. So there will be a shuttle service, and there was a lot of commentary at the meeting about the need to increase the frequency and the hours of the shuttle service from what was provided when the crash last year shut down the path. Because there are people that work second shift, for example, at EB, like a gentleman who exclusively rides a bicycle to EB from the city of Groton, who was at the meeting, stated how, he needs to be able to get back and he doesn't drive. So, yeah. Right, any other information that,
No, I think
Either
that's,
anybody-
because sorry, they did have a handout sheet that's all available, gonna be available, I think, like tomorrow online, or, Friday. Or
That's right.
Tomorrow or Friday online.
as well as the presentation they made, which, and the YouTube, the entire meeting is available to watch. Fellow member of Bike Head Connecticut board watched it yesterday, he indicated today. And he's an engineer and he was very impressed by the project.
Brian, I have a question to you. What are your feelings in terms of a roundabout being safe or unsafe for bicyclists? And
They can be made safe. They can be designed safe. I've ridden through dozens of roundabouts on a bicycle or gone around them on the pathway. So you can, I think in the case of this roundabout, the designers really want to encourage cyclists to take the pathways that circumnavigate the roundabout on its perimeter, which means crossing at a designated crossing point, each of the legs, which obviously slows you down if you're on a bike, because you must be sure that traffic has seen you and has yielded to you when you cross over. But there will be plenty of cyclists who are very comfortable and confident riding in traffic who will just flow through the roundabout just like a vehicle. I've gone through roundabouts both ways, and they just all depends on your level of confidence and comfort and how much traffic there is and how safe the crossings are. So I think they're going to make a strong effort to make the crossings very safe. And the nice thing about roundabouts when you're on a bicycle is you're really only engaging with vehicles coming from one direction. You know, you don't have crossing traffic at all. So you just have to make contact with whoever is approaching and make sure that they're stopping to let you cross if that's what you're doing. So there's really just you and one vehicle involved when you're making a crossing versus a signalized intersection where you could, you know, they're coming from all different directions.
And I think they emphasize that it's a very wide intersection currently. So even though it's a four-way intersection, to cross it is
Yeah.
fairly intimidating.
Yeah.
at the
Yeah, I
moment.
wouldn't want to ride through there now on a bicycle. So I'd be more comfortable in a roundabout. Okay. There was, you know, I understand that the city of New London and the city of Groton have both been, you know, involved with this project from DOT, but neither was, well, we didn't hear from either government at that meeting. So we can only assume that they've been involved and that they've had input, but we'd like to hear from both governments and specifically from the city of Groton on their opinion or their position on that roundabout, since that's the principal change happening in the city. And that roundabout represents a great opportunity for a gateway statement because it's got a large internal green space that could be a large monument, a sculpture. It could be welcome to the city of Groton and, you know, wayfinding and that sort of thing, placemaking. So it would be interesting to learn what the city thinks about it.
Thank you. There was probably last year, maybe Mr. Hanover would remember, the city was to do a demonstration project at that intersection. And they got a lot of pushback on some of the ideas that they had floated. And I recently heard that there's going to be another demonstration project coming up. And I'm curious, it would be nice to know, as you're saying, what the sentiment is about the roundabout and how, if their demonstration project is going to tie in, given that it will eventually be a different traffic pattern. And I don't know how we would get this information or even if it's anything within our purview, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I know they looked, a few years ago, they were looking at a number of improvements, but it was all a signalized intersection. And then I actually attended a DOT online meeting, I don't know, it was probably two or 3 months ago, maybe, about the northbound rehabilitation. And they kind of like had another 5-minute segment at the end of the meeting. Oh yeah, by the way, we're redoing the lane, the ped lane, and we're putting this roundabout in. And that's the first I had seen of it or heard of it. So I'm assuming they had talked to the city, but I don't know that for a fact. And I have heard that they are doing another demonstration project, but I don't know if that's going to be for like the roundabout or some other signal that they're I don't know, to be honest with you.
Well, I have seen the plans for the demonstration project, which were prepared at least a year ago, if not more, and because of delays, have been continued to be postponed on implementation, and they were for the existing intersection to narrow some of the lanes to allow for bicycle and pedestrian improvements, shorter crossings, and that sort of thing. So this preliminary design by DOT, I think, may come as something of a surprise for at least as far as that demonstration project is concerned. And not to cast any aspersions, but I think the DOT's typical process is to really do their homework and make sure that what they're going to roll out in the public is feasible, is and economical, and can be built within the constraints of the project. So they don't tend to leak any information about what's coming until they're ready to announce it and show it to the public. And then, so in that interim time, while they're doing their design work and research on a project, other things may be going on that are completely unaware. And that could be a case of this, but that's just the nature of the bureaucracy. They want to get it right, and you can't fault them for that. And in the same vein, now I'm going to change now. I'm going to move to item 2. Are there any other comments or questions about Gold Star Bridge? Okay. Item 2 is Mystic Drawbridge bike lanes. So about 3 years ago, an individual at Bike Stonington began promoting the idea of bike lanes on the drawbridge to make crossing the bridge safer for cyclists. So particularly people riding skinny tire bikes can get into a lot of let's call it unwanted influence from that open grate of the bridge, which is this, corrugated metal type of grate. So it can pull you from side to side. And if it's wet, it's particularly hazardous. Even on a mountain bike, it can be hazardous. And so the advocacy was for some sort of a system that would bolt plates or coverings on the bridge in each direction so that a bicyclist could ride down, basically a bike lane fastened onto that surface. And some research was done showing that similar bridges in other cities, even some in the north, like in New York State, had done this, and that it seemed to be working okay, but it was really difficult to do effective research from an advocate's position, because you really need to talk to public works directors in these places and really get into how these systems have performed. So DOT was not particularly receptive. The Stonington local traffic authority sent a letter to DOT saying that they thought it would be a worthy project. The Groton Traffic Authority, I believe, communicated with DOT in a similar vein, but time went by and there was no response. But very recently, we learned this. Mike Stonington learned from the Stonington police chief, who had been attending meetings with DOT, that in an upcoming bridge renovation project, which really has not been advertised at all, but it's coming at some point in the relatively near future. Bike lane plates will be part of the project, and that the department has done a lot of research. They've reached out to places like, I think there's one in Rochester, New York, and learned a lot about it. I don't know if there were any site visits, but they have apparently concluded that it's acceptable and that it can work with the drawbridge. It adds weight, and of course the drawbridge is very sensitive to weight because it has to be finely balanced. But that this is, from a preliminary point of view, I understand that this is part of the scope of the project. So that's really good news. But it came as a recent surprise after no communication really on the subject for years. So it's just an example of how a bureaucracy and agency makes very sure that what they're gonna roll out in a project is going to be acceptable and feasible and all those other boxes that you must check. So kudos to DOT for,
Do you know what year that project is? Or did you say that?
I don't, do you know?
Yeah, I was at that same meeting because I wasn't even aware they're gonna contemplate any repairs to the drawbridge. And so we wanted to make sure that, after the meeting, we notified like the Chamber of Commerce, everything, hey, this, some of the business owners down, this is coming, but they are having a public informational meeting. I don't know the date. I should be able, I could probably send that to you
In the near future?
in the near future,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
I want to say it's probably, and they gave us some dates. I don't really want to say publicly. It's
Okay.
fairly soon, within the next year or two,
okay,
I would say.
okay. Well, that's really great.
Yeah, and they say these plates, they've been used in northern locations, so there's, snowplow
Mhm.
doesn't bother them and stuff.
Mhm.
So,
Right. That was the principal concern when this was first floated, reportedly, was that snow plowing. Now, but the fact though is that the bridge doesn't get plowed because snow goes right through the deck. But these plates may accumulate some snow. They're perforated, my understanding, but it may not function the way that the open grate does. So there may be some plowing involved just with these plates. So it's certainly something that the department wants to be very comfortable with. There are at least 4, I believe.
well, the pictures look like only a couple feet wide. There was one in each direction, I believe.
I don't think 2 feet though is compliant at all. I think it has to be at least 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, again, it was a picture, it wasn't like a drawing or anything. And then it was in a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, still, it's a lot better than what's there now. Now, what I do and what some riders obviously want to do is ride down that narrow concrete strip. It's about 12 inches wide, and so as long as you can see it and it's dry and you're comfortable riding, you really have to be going pretty fast and to stay in line like that. The faster you ride, the more stable you are in keeping a straight line. So it is what it is. It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky. All right. Any more comments, questions about that project? No. Okay. So next up is a subject that is coming around to Groton for the plan of conservation and development. And it will involve updating the complete streets, trails and connectivity sections of the plan. And Tom is involved in the POCD update, I believe. So do you have any news for us?
I'm involved through the conservation. And right now, from what we're being told, is that this is still being run by the Office of Planning and Development Services, which Deb is responsible for coordinating. They put an RFP out, and the bids come in. They made a selection, and now they're going through the final award process. It should be posted here. We were told to be expecting it by the end of the month, like this week. So once that happens, then there'll be meetings to be held joint between the Conservation Commission, Economic Development, that chaired by the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they have the ultimate responsibility for issuance and control of what's going into the POCD. But do they recognize that other agencies within the town need to contribute? So they would be coordinating that. So so I would be expecting a call. We probably need to be proactive to say, this is where we probably need to follow up with Deb and say, make sure we get an invite too, as the complete streets folks to that startup. I know what Conservation Commission has already met through there's a meetings of the chairs of the various commissions on a recurring basis. That was addressed at the last chairs meeting, which was held back in December, I think. So we're on the list of the notifications, but I don't think that we weren't established as the
Right.
committee at the time. And so I don't know if we've made that cut. So I think that's the only thing from our perspective, is we need to be proactive. Come with that, but not to make sure that we get an invite to that, what that means comes up and watch it for.
Okay, good. All right, just to clarify, the RFP that went out was to private consulting companies to assist the town in preparation of the POCD update.
Yeah.
All right, so similar to what FHI is providing for the Complete Streets and Trails Master Plan, this consultancy would be providing similar services for that plan. And so presumably there would be meetings with stakeholders. And we, of course, are a primary stakeholder in the realm of transportation and connectivity. So, so we will be sure that we're sitting at the table on this. But it's not imminent. I mean, it's going to be,
That's what I say, I'm looking online here, see if I can find if they actually did the award yet, but it was scheduled to be done by the end of June. And then once that's done, then they can start, tasking the contractor and all this kind of stuff, and then to start have these initial meetings and all this kind of stuff for him to get the inputs necessary.
okay. So once that happens, do you feel it'd be appropriate for the committee to have a POCD subcommittee? For this committee to have a subcommittee that would deal with
Well,
it?
we have to, one of the things that needs to be decided, and I don't know where planning and zoning is fully, but I can tell you that from the preliminary discussions we've had from Mr. Reiner working with the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that they want to kind of change the format, okay? Under the current POCD format, there's a section 2, which is all the conservation stuff. Then there's a chapter 3, which is all the planning, zoning, and economic development stuff. And then there's some other stuff. And inside each one of those areas there that you see that there's a section, like there is a section about trails and all this type of stuff, and it's in section 2, okay, under the Conservation Commission, because that's just how that contract, their past contractor set all of it up. So, but I know that they're trying to have a different flow to this thing, rather than having each little section having its own little section about all these action items that come out of it from the discussion. There'll be a discussion and then 1, 2, 3, 4 action items as far as to track, okay, in each section by section. But they want to take a more holistic view rather than such a detailed thing of, this is for trails, this is for open space, this is for historical areas, these are for recreation park areas, these are for commercial development, these are for changes that need to be done to the zoning. This is what we want for industrial stuff, this is what we want for apartments, and this, each section had its own little thing. They want to take a much more holistic. And they say that one of the better ones of a POCD that they want the future to look like was the Hartford, the town of Hartford's recent one that was issued back in I think in 22. I've read through that. It is much more holistic, and it comes out with a lot less action items per se. But because they're looking at it from a more whole global perspective at a higher level, rather than the gory details that says we want this, 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 and this to happen. So that's one of the things that they're going more to, because there's this thing, well, if it's good enough for the big city and for them, it should be good for us. And it meets the requirements of having a POCD, because that requirement is very vague at the state level. But if you don't have a POCD, you're not going to get grants.
Right.
That's for sure. So that's why you have to have the POCD.
Right. Okay, well, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so more to follow
Okay.
as the direction comes out of the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they really have the lead as far as where this is all going. But it appears that there's going to be a change in the format. And so how much we're going to be able to contribute to that process, I think is really going to depend on what we get, the product we get for the master plan, as far as being able to have it referenced rather than but I don't anticipate that we're going to have like our own section in there like we currently do.
Okay, good. Thank you for that explanation, Don. All right, so let's move on the agenda into old business, and we have on the agenda Complete Streets and Trails Project update from Parks and Rec. NFHI Consultants. Parks and Rec can't be here today, but we do have Nicole and Francisco. Do you all have anything you would like us to know about today?
We do. We'd like to provide you a brief update on our status, and I do have a presentation I can share. It will help with that. It's not lengthy, but it'll give you an overview. So I will share my screen now. Somehow we ended up on the very last slide, but let me go to the beginning. Okay, well, thank you all for your time. Like I said, we just want to update you on work that is ongoing. Give you an update on the online survey, which we've had a good boost in our participation, so that's fantastic. Talk about the focus group meetings we're in the process of scheduling, and talk about the next steps we have in front of us. So ongoing work, we're on the technical side of this right now, building upon the mapping work that we've discussed earlier. And as a reminder, in our workshop we conducted with you, we did some preliminary network mapping, identifying the existing and the preferred routes. And then when we met with you last month, we showed you a bunch of data we collected, including traffic volume and speed, and our origins and destination survey and heat map of where we expect bike activity to be. So we're really building upon that work, and that much of that is existing conditions. And we're starting now to think about what kind of network we can accommodate and what type of bike facilities are really needed given the conditions. But one of the first steps in that process was to develop a stress map. And this is based upon factors like roadway speed or posted speed limit where we don't have available speed data, traffic volume, and some other conditions. And so red are all the hot spots where those are the challenging areas, and green are the more favorable conditions. And based upon all that, we're starting to build, and this is a work in progress, we're starting to build out a preferred network map. So based upon the conditions, we've identified you would need a separated facility on some of these corridors, or a buffered bike lane, or an unbuffered bike lane, or a shared roadway. Now, that's preferred for the conditions, but that's not necessarily what the physical constraints may allow. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So here we have a couple roadways. If you just take a look at posted speed limit or maybe even traffic volume, they might look similar, but we have very different contexts here. On Route 184 in the top image, you could see that those conditions are fairly favorable to accommodating a bike lane and maybe even a buffered bike lane on each side of the road, versus on Military Highway, where I think you recognize we'd be extremely challenged to accommodate a bike facility due to the grades, the narrowness of the roadway, the guardrail, utilities. And so to accommodate a separated facility there, or bike lane, would be very costly, which isn't to say it's not recommended, but if it were recommended, it would likely be a long-term recommendation due to the cost and the challenges in that context. So that's what we're doing now. We're going through these corridors, and not just corridors, but segment by segment of the corridor, because some of these corridors and roads change quite a bit, mile over mile. And we're going through those and mapping it. And I think what we'd like to do is come back to you at our next meeting or a subsequent meeting and really walk you through the entire network and what we think the potential is for these specific corridors throughout the network. With respect to our online surveys, I mentioned we've had a great boon in participation. We're at about 100 responses when we last met. We're now at 471, including one Spanish language response. So we're getting great participation. So please do keep promoting in whatever capacity you have been promoting it. It would be great to hit the 1,000 mark, but I think if we get north of 500, we've got a really solid participation and something we can really start to get some direction out of and from. With respect to receiving input and direction, the online survey is not the only tool that we're using. The next tool that will be rolling out is focus group meetings. These meetings are intended to be small format meetings. They'll be held virtually online with groups of anywhere from 5 to 10 people. And we're trying to schedule and structure those around specific groups of stakeholders or particular topic areas of the plan. By example, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and that is with primarily bike commuters and bike advocates. So those meetings are about an hour and a half. We've got a series of talking points or questions to lead the discussion, and those discussions and the questions we ask will vary from group to group. Tomorrow we want to talk about the experience of bike commuting and from a bike commuter or a bike advocate or recreational rider's perspective, where the improvements are needed and what type of improvements. We are also working to schedule a park and open space connectivity meeting, and we had trouble lining up schedules for this week. So we put out an invite actually earlier today to schedule something July 8th. In addition to those 2 meetings, we are very interested in conducting at least 2, maybe 3 additional meetings, potentially with representatives of institutions, businesses in the town. One focused on public safety that would include fire department, police, and other interested parties. I can tell you, we did in our first round of invites a couple weeks ago. We did send out an invite to everyone that we've identified to date, and that's names and contact information provided to us from Mark and from yourselves. And we had some responses, but there's a lot of people we have not yet heard from, and so we're just going to keep sending out emails. If we have to, we'll pick up the phone and start calling people to get some meetings scheduled. So we plan on keeping at it, and over the course of the summer, if we have to do 1 a week, ideally, we're doing a couple of these a week, and we would have conducted these, before the end of summer, so that information and whatever we learn can get rolled into the work that we're doing. And in addition to that, we need to schedule a community workshop. And I know we talked about this at our last meeting. And as a reminder, the community workshop is intended to be a larger meeting, open to the public and other key stakeholders. So not just residents. If you work, go to school, cycle in Groton, you're welcome to join. And so we're really looking to get a group of 30, 40, 50, 60 plus people in a room and have a very interactive meeting. So not just us presenting, but maps on the table, working through all the pinch points and the connections that are needed, and talking about people's experiences and what they feel is needed to improve bicycle and walking conditions. We had talked at our last meeting initially, we had talked very early in the process. If we were to go back a few months, I think we had hoped to potentially conduct this in June. And, we just weren't able to line that up. And more recently at our last meeting, we talked about the idea of conducting that in July or August. And I know there was some thoughts that perhaps some of the advantage of that were that we would be able to engage summer residents. you know, so I want to open that discussion back up for any direction from you. I think I've found that it can be a challenge to get people's attention in July or August, and that summer residents, well, we certainly want to invite them to participate in the process. You know, they may be here, they're potentially just focused on enjoying their summer and enjoying their vacations. And I don't know how successful we might be in getting them to spend an afternoon or evening with us inside an air-conditioned space. So with that being said, I guess you could tell what my perspective is on that. Outside of the summer, I think September is second half of September would be a great time to conduct a workshop. So with all that said, I'd like to open it up and hear comments and thoughts from you folks.
I have one question for you. One of the things I ran into recently under my conservation commission had working with the town of Stonington, they've been working with the Nature Conservancy on a development of a greenway. And they were reached out to me because I did a lot of greenway work here in Groton. But they use a website called whenavailable.com. And it allows you to, you send the invite, say, hey, we'd like you to attend a meeting, and then please let us know what your schedule is. You get all that information. It kind of forces you to, on your response, you respond through this website, and you just check the dates, time of day, and they already have some preliminary ones set up, and which ones can you make to kind of help out, rather than just being so open-ended. I just offered that as an experience here they're using in the local area here.
Yeah, we did something similar, not with that particular application, but we used a doodle poll. And so we sent out a bunch of different time slots. And we, like I said, we got some responses to that doodle poll. And based upon that, we were able to schedule that first meeting. I think the real issue was that we had, of the 30 plus people we reached out to, we heard from about 10 or so, or fewer than 10. So the real issue is just getting people to pay attention and respond. Yeah, which it's always a challenge.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions. The first being, can you tell us anything about, do you have any analytics for the responses that you've received? So who has responded?
Yeah.
Have they accessed it from the town's Greater Groton website? Have they accessed it from social media? I don't know if these are posted around town. Are they scanning QR codes? Do you have anything like that available? First of all, so where are they accessing the survey? Second thing is, who are the people that are responding? So are we getting Groton residents? Are we getting a certain age demographic? And then in addition to that, when you're done with that question, my second question is, the people who will be at the bike presentation or the bike focus group, I assuming our chair will be there, but do we know who was invited? Because all of us were asked to send names. And I did not hear back as to who was there. So is it possible to tell us who was there? That way, if someone's missing, we can reach out to them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, I'm happy to do that. What I could do is I can distribute the list of people that were invited to that particular meeting, and I can note who has accepted or who responded and has accepted. So we can get that out. I'll send that out to Mark and Brian to distribute to the rest of you. We have added, if there's a name that came in, an email address, we've added it to, we have a spreadsheet that we're keeping to track it, and we've added those, and the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So if you have additional name, once we send that out, if you note that there are people missing or additional people you would like us to reach out to, we're happy to do so. Going back to the first question on the survey, I haven't pulled we're going to download the responses, and we have a certain number of questions built into the beginning of the survey about who we're hearing about. Do you live in Groton? Where in Groton do you live, and do you work here, go to school here, etc. So we'll have a sense as to what share of Groton residents that we're hearing from, and it's typically for this type of survey, we're typically hearing primarily from town residents. So we'll be able to provide all the analytics on that. As far as how people are finding the survey, what source they're using, I can't answer that for you. We have been broadcasting this. We've provided social media ads or postings. So it's gone out in social media. There's a link on the town website. We've had message board displays with the promotion for the survey as well. And there is a QR code that can help people shortcut them to the survey.
Any other questions for Francisco? Okay, mine has to do with the timing of the community workshop.
Yes, yes.
And I think I agree with you about the challenge in attracting summer residents to an event like that. And the difficulty in even attracting full-time residents in the summer. But the concern would be if we postpone it until, say, September, has so much work been done by FHI by then that the input has less relevance?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question and a very reasonable concern. You know, I think given where we'll be come September, for example, we will have developed the preferred network mapping that we're working on. We will have identified what those major constraints are, and we'll have a sense as to, you know, what types of facilities would be required given the constraints and the degree of challenge. But what we would not have yet established would be really the priority for any of those given corridors or segments, or for that matter, the preference for a facility type. You know, if we identify that you could do a bike lane on these conditions, but a separated facility like a side path or some other form of separated bike lane would be preferred because of the traffic or speed, but really challenging. We need the community to provide us guidance with that. So I think September gives us a chance to really get all of our homework done and be ready to ask very specific questions and receive clear guidance from the community on what their priorities are. And so to me, it's really a matter of prioritizing what we develop. And that, I think, you know, that gives us a full 3 months to wrap up our work by the end of the year. So I don't think it's too late in the process. I think if we could have done it in June, that would have worked great too. You know, that being said, we wouldn't have been as far along in the process, so we might not have as pointed questions for the public as we would have in September, where we'll know exactly some of the locations and some of the issues that we need some input and guidance on. So that aspect of it I like, and I honestly don't have concerns about it being too late in the process. I wouldn't want to go past September though.
Okay, why don't we poll the committee while we're here today about your opinion on timing of the workshop? So start with you, Patrice. How do you feel about it?
I'm fine with September. I think it's more important that we get more responses to the survey though. And I would like to know if this has gotten into the hands of various leaders in the neighborhoods in Groton to make sure that they are all responding to this. I think the actual meeting, you're going to get the diehards that are going to show up no matter what. But we need, I think, a lot more responses to this. And without staff being present, I don't know what has been done and what's not been done. I just made a list of 4 people that I'm going to reach to again, just to be sure that their neighborhoods are participating in this. So I'm fine with, whenever. I think you'll get the same people showing up no matter what time of year you have it, as long as we get the responses while the summer people are here.
Cindy?
I agree with Patrice. I don't think the timing's as important as the input that we get from community members. I can see it both ways. There's pros and cons to either an earlier meeting or September, so.
I also agree with the getting, the surveys, if as far as for the summer people, the survey doesn't ask that, but I think having the numbers would indicate that we would get it. A lot of that is, is focusing in on the Groton Long Point area in particular and the Noank area. And as far as for the summer people, and as far as, I don't know what's going on right now. I know Mark has been trying to go through like the senior center and that stuff, because but we did get some comments back, like I was at the Trails Coordination Task Force last Thursday. And when Mark handed it out to everybody there, because he was advertising, go out and reach with Avalonia, GOSA and that type of stuff. Then we got some pushback particularly from the town councilor Jones, who was at the meeting also, saying it was too hard to get to. I couldn't even get to it because particularly working through the Greater Groton thing, you gotta dive down a couple, like 3 layers to find the survey, and it wasn't apparent to him. There's nothing that just blazes out, says take survey here when you get to this website, to the Greater Groton website. But this card does have the survey, but it's kind of, you don't know which one of these you're looking at. It says take survey here. It does say it on the card. And it does take you straight to the survey, but it's a matter of knowing that. But it didn't come up when if you go to the Greater Groton website, you have to dig down 3 layers to get to it. And that's what's kind of confusing. He didn't have the card. He just heard about it and tried to go. Now, I just did a Google search on Groton Bike Survey, it does come up to the survey plan now, but again, it's kind of taking you back. It's not directly to the survey, but then it's one step more that you have to do, but you're still at that website, so it gets you close enough that it says take survey here, click the button. So I think we're doing as much as we can. This whole social media thing, I don't know what happens out in that world. I don't really pay attention to Instagrams and Facebooks and all this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of archaic, and that I really admit to it. But I don't know what the town's ability to go advertise in that arena is. I think that's really where if you're going to want to get some heavy duty youth and younger inputs, that's where you've got to go, from what I've been told and talking to folks. I did do a little bit of just a spot check. This past week, I've been working down at Electric Boat for the supervisor shipbuilding and talking to some folks there. They have no idea about it, but the guys that are riding the bikes, I asked, because I stopped by the bike rack, it's right next to where I parked my car, and they didn't know about it either. And so you try to tell them about it, but that word doesn't get out for the younger generation. If that's where we're trying to get inputs, I think that's really the focus. And I don't know who from the town has the ability to go push that stuff. I know I don't, as an individual here, even as a member of the task force, of the committee here. But we probably need something to be more proactive in that arena, and pretty quickly, if in the next month, within the next couple of weeks here. I just don't know enough about who from the staff here that has that social media reach. And I don't know if FHI has that social media reach to be going out and doing it. I don't know if that's part of your tasking, or is rely on the town to be doing it. That's where I guess would be my question and recommendation.
Well, and the other aspect is, excuse me for interrupting you, but we need to know what's been done, so we are not duplicating efforts. So if the town has already done X, I don't want to waste my time contacting all these people and having it duplicated. I mean, I don't know what FHI can do because they don't have access to the town social media. That's very controlled, right? But it would be nice to know what's been tried and how much is coming from social media and how much is coming from whatever other source it is. That's why I'd asked the question about the analytics. It's kind of disappointing that we don't have them, but I would say, I guess we're just going to have to run the risk of duplicating efforts just to be able to get the responses that we need at this point.
Well, Parks and Rec has a vigorous social media presence. but they can only penetrate into the environment of, Facebook and Instagram very far. It depends on eyes on their postings and sharing of their information. Social media is only as good as the amount of sharing that happens. Because we could all post this on our personal Facebook and Instagram pages, and it may not go very far. It may go to our friends and that's it, but it's a challenge. And I don't know if there's any silver bullet to get better.
We don't
penetration.
have influencers in our.
We don't have an influencer.
You can target your population. You could run an ad for like $25 and you can say, I want it to be within this geographic range. And you could say, I also want it to be in this demographic range. And I think that's what we need to do.
Well, we need to learn what Parks and Rec has done in that regard, whether they're just putting it up on their Facebook page without any additional penetration then, because you're right. I didn't think about that.
Well, just as I'm looking up the Groton Parks and Rec Instagram thing, and they only have 977 followers. So we won't even get to 1,000 if we rely on that.
Has it already gone out in the day? Do we know?
I sent the information to Kimberly about it, and I think she mentioned it in one of her articles, right?
She
So
did.
She did have the link and everything
She did.
incorporated in that article.
That's right.
But I mean, on Instagram, we could see if like the chamber could put it out on theirs, like different restaurants in town could put it out, like Mystic Cycle Center could put it on their story. And I think lot
Mystic
of
Cycle
people,
Center has these cards at their checkout counter. I was just there today picking up a bicycle. So I did, and I had these with me. I was going to give them some and I was like, oh, they already got them. So
if I'm like
okay,
already
that's
on my phone on Instagram though, and I see a survey, I'm much more likely to take it than like grabbing a flyer. Like I think
yeah,
I would very rarely grab a flyer and then later
Yeah.
look into it.
Yeah.
true. Okay.
I also vote September. I don't think we're gonna get more people in the summer than we would in September. Summer residents or not.
Okay. So my attitude about the workshop is I would rather have it in September. Because I think you'll be able to frame the issues more clearly, more tightly. You'll be able to
Okay.
submit like examples of facilities that might be appropriate within the various corridors, and you can ask people for their preference, and you can really hone in on more useful feedback than if you're just asking people to brainstorm and to, and to just throw out their wish list. So I'm definitely in favor of a September schedule.
Okay, good. What I'll do is I'll coordinate with Mark on availability of rooms and best dates for that, mid-September.
Now, your coordination with Mark is you guys meet every other week in between these
Correct,
meetings.
we
Is that
do.
correct?
We
So
do,
your
that's-
next meeting would be in 2 weeks. Is it from today or?
No, because this meeting was delayed by a week or rescheduled. So our next meeting with him is next week, although I have to check to see how the holiday affects that.
Yeah.
Because we usually meet on Wednesday. So assuming he's in, that the 4th is on Thursday. Assuming he's in on Wednesday, then we would meet. But we do have regular communications throughout the month, regardless. So this conversation wouldn't need to have to wait until our next meeting. I could follow up with him immediately.
Okay, so I think the follow-up that the committee here is interested in is knowing kind of what has been the social media outreach so far.
Okay.
And how can it be enhanced and amplified? So
Okay, yeah, I could follow up with Mark on that, and as I think you figured out, the town's been responsible for the promotions. We've just been designing the social media post and the graphics for the flyers. So I can't speak as to exactly what the town has done, but I know it's been social media, print media, websites. And I believe even maybe lawn signs we designed a lawn sign sized promotion for the survey.
Yeah, and there are some, there's one outside of this building. I
okay.
think I've seen them in a couple of other
Yep.
town sites. So that's good. That's great. Yes, Cindy.
I think you've already missed that because that mailing will be going out. It's already probably all staged and stuff because it has to be in everybody's hand by Monday. Because they're supposed to be, there's technically, they set it up to be delivered on the 1st of July, which is on Monday. So that's already, well, putting it at for the people that are paying in person, yeah, you could be doing it there. I won't argue that. That's a good idea.
So the handbill could be posted in more places, presumably, that
And across the street at Dairy Queen.
would catch people's attention, and across the street at Dairy Queen.
While you're waiting in line there, fill it out.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more questions for FHI? Anyone? No?
And just as a data point, Groton Parks and Rec has almost 8,000 followers on Facebook.
Hmm.
So maybe that's
Okay.
significantly more.
1,000.
Chamber. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Francisco, for
All
the
right.
presentation, for answering our questions. We're going to move on to
Okay.
our other business. So you're free to sign off if you'd like to, or you
Yeah.
can hang around. Okay,
Thank
thank you
you
very
for
much.
your time.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right, bye.
They have 15,000.
now which chamber is that? So
That's
that's
the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce.
okay.
That's the one that is by
15.
the bridge. It's the Bruce Flax and Company. Yeah.
That's right. Don't use it.
Yeah.
But I think if they posted it to their Instagram, it would be this. It would be similar. I think most young people are on there.
Okay, so our next item is town projects. First one up is the Route 215 Brook Street to Esper Point bike lane symbols and signage. I was down there on my bike yesterday, so I rode both ways on it, and happy to see it. Greg, can you give us a little more background on how that came to be and exactly what were the beginning and end points, and how those were determined?
It was a request from a couple of residents that live along there to reestablish it, because when DOT, I guess, went through there and paved a number of years ago, they didn't repaint the bike lane symbols in the bike lanes themselves between Brook Street and Elm Street, which was that, the old 1970s bike route. So we actually approached DOT a few times about doing a double line buffered bike lane. We're actually going to go all the way up to Route 1, and after a number of iterations, they finally told us no, you can only do a single line, just put back what's there. You can put back the bike symbols and you can put up signage. So we did that, and at that time we also said, all right, well, so we'll go from Brook Street to Elm Street, but let's just keep it going all the way down to Esper Point Beach. It just made sense. We had the room for it. So that's a town road there. So we did that, restriped that because the center lines were getting all faded and everything else, that section. And that's what we ended up with. But it's my understanding that when the Amtrak Railroad Bridge gets rebuilt in a couple of years, that DOT is going to reestablish or put in bike lanes all the way up.
All the
to
way.
Route 1,
Right.
and they're going to put in the double buffer, which is kind of ironic that
Right.
they told us
Wonder where
no.
they thought of that. Where'd that
Yeah.
idea come from? All right.
So that's where it stands.
Okay. All right. And because your Shero symbols and at Brook Street, you had to put a sign there
Bike lane or
that
something.
states bike lane ends, which in reality, the amount of space doesn't change at all. You still
Yeah.
have that full shoulder,
Yeah.
but the only difference is your symbols are no longer there. But that's a statutory requirement.
Yeah, I think, DOT reviewed the plans and they were they must have reviewed this thing more than I think they reviewed any plan in the state of Connecticut, because it went back and forth, I don't know how many times, and they were like, okay, this sign has to be here, here, here. They gave us everything that needed to be done, and
Okay.
we finally said, okay, whatever you guys want to do, we just want to get the bike lane symbols back, and
Now, just refresh me, when is DOT looking at a bike lane on the bridge over the Palmer Cove there
no, they're gonna stop at Elm Street.
at Elm Street
But
also?
they're putting in sidewalks from somewhere in Tanglewood, I'm not sure exactly where, over the bridge, and then they're gonna, actually that gravel shoulder that's there now is gonna become a sidewalk all the way down to the entrance to Esker Point Beach. And then the Palmer's Cove Road, or the Palmer's Cove Bridge, which is the one next to the Fisherman, which is gonna get replaced at the same time, is gonna have a sidewalk. Right now, they're putting it on the north side over that bridge, but then it's gonna end just beyond the bridge. They're not actually gonna bring it into Groton Long Point like we had asked for when it was a town or we're looking at when it was a town project. It's gonna stop short of, I think the first property on the right as you come down into Groton Long Point. So
You know why?
because the property takes, I guess the way to if they widen it out, it would be quite a drop to the properties, and they didn't want to get into creating driveways to a couple homes that were just going to be almost impossible to get in and out of.
Because those houses are such a low elevation.
Low elevation,
They're a
yeah,
few feet above sea level.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, that's interesting. And so that, the Palmer Cove Bridge is in design or has been designed. I understand that it was really challenging because of the elevation that it
Yeah,
needed to be raised up to.
yeah,
right?
it's, the bridge itself should be raised, but since DOT's taken over, it's really kind of become just a bridge project versus redoing the whole causeway. So they're just doing the bridge and then like a little bit to each side of it. So it will be coming up and then back down again.
Okay.
They've got like a structure study has been completed. There will be a public informational meeting, I think in December. For that bridge, they'll have the preliminary plans completed by then. But they're scheduled for construction in 2027 and 2028.
Okay,
And they're planning to do kind of both at the same time, which
so the railroad bridge and the
Yeah.
Palmer Cove Bridge,
it's
same.
Well, from a traffic control perspective, there may be advantages, it's, it's less signalization and all this kind of stuff.
yeah. I think, I want to say both of them, they're going to look at not doing construction in the middle of the summer because of all the traffic on
Mhm.
Ground Long Point. They'll be doing the shoulder season plus through the winter.
Okay.
That's their plan right now.
All right, thank you for that update. The next item is bike route project from Depot Road to Thomas Road. Now I know that Parks and Rec has been involved in that, but I'm wondering if you know anything more about it, because my understanding is that the solicitation for an engineering consultant went unanswered.
That's my understanding as well. And
And so
I
now
have
that
not talked to
question-
Mark since then to know what.
Which is really disappointing, because
Yeah.
there's a funded project, or at least the design, not the entire project is funded, but the town can't find anybody to design it. That hopefully will, it should be re-released.
Yeah, we will at some point.
Okay. Okay. Noank Main Street, I think I understood that there was discussion of a public workshop happening soon. Is that still the case?
Yeah, we, after their presentation at the last meeting, they've gone back and done some reiterations based on the comments that they received here, some comments that we gave them. So they've come up with some plans that will be presented at a public informational meeting. We have it scheduled for July 25th at 7 o'clock, and that'll be right here in room 1 at the annex. We'll be putting out that information to all the Noack residents and to the general public.
Great.
Right. Probably next week.
It was on July, date again,
25th.
25th.
It's a Thursday night.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Last item, and I've just, reprinted this because this is the kind of item that just kind of gets forgotten easily, and that is how can the town implement bike racks at town hall in here? Does it need to be something that an outside group participates in? Like, does Bike Groton need to be involved some way? Or can it be handled through ordinary budgets by Public Works, Public Parks and Rec or Planning? Or do you have any ideas about how we can get, because, a bike rack is an inexpensive item. It's just a question of getting from here to there.
Yeah, no, we did have a meeting about this, and Parks and Rec is going to look and get a couple different options and pricing, and then we're just going to, through our operating budget, we'll just purchase these and get these installed.
Okay. All right, great. Space is tight, especially around this building. There's more space in front of town hall because it's got those larger sidewalks. But here you've just got these narrow walkways that surround the building. So
if we have to find a spot and pour a pad or something, we can do that too. I mean,
that'd be good. Okay.
Whatever it takes, we'll get a couple in both locations.
Terrific. All right, that's good. Thank you. All right, we don't have anyone from the public here. Any other information items from anyone? I'll just say that I've been riding a bike to work more lately between my home and our office in this. It's only 2.5 miles, but it's almost entirely on Route 215. But the amount of traffic and the speeds that some people are traveling on Route 215 goes up dramatically in summertime.
Mhm.
And I think there's so many summer residents in Groton Long Point and kind of in that part of town that are going back and forth to Mystic, that it really, I think it focuses a need for trying to be, not necessarily enforcing more, although that would be great. I know that that's hard to do, but the what do you call the feedback signs that give you your speed limit? That show you your speed.
The digitals.
The
signs.
digitals.
Yeah.
Is that a public, is that a police department?
That's
Yeah,
the police
it's the
department
police
thing, but
department,
you have to go through the Traffic Safety Council, which is the police,
Traffic Authority.
traffic authority, right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's a town manager and a police chief.
So I need to reach out to the LTA about, I will reach out to the LTA about installing one on Route 215.
Yeah, I think they're purchasing a few more of those too. If I recall.
I felt like I was about to be run over yesterday. The van came so close. And it was a work van by Rings End Lumber Company. And so as soon as I got to the office, I called Rings End. And I said, tell your driver, because he's out now, exactly who it is. He needs to pay attention. But when it's just a member of the public in their personal car, you can't really do that. So,
That is a tight road that I walked on it to get coffee this morning from the same spot, basically.
Yeah.
And even like for a bike, like I was walking on the sidewalk and there's a lot of bushes by the sidewalk. And a biker was going by me on like a very teeny tiny shoulder. And just for me and the biker, for them to get out of traffic felt very tight. So it's not wildly walkable.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot, so.
It can be stressful. Okay, well, I think that's it for today.
Can I just bring up one thing? And
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess I just don't ever know how to bring this up, but and when this would kind of come up in our planning. But in our plans of making bike lanes and just having a more walkable town in general. And I've brought this up before, and I think they told me that we kind of have this in our plan for Groton. But I would just love for the downtown Groton area to be much more walkable and, pleasant to walk up to storefronts and stuff. And I think many of our strip mall-y type areas seem very much like you have to drive in. Like it would be weird to just walk up from the sidewalk. And I was in a town recently, Barrington, Rhode Island, if you've ever been there. And they have a very similar vibe of busy roads, strip mall-y type places, and a lot of bike lanes. And they have their storefronts, even like Bank of America's and, chain restaurants types of things have a door right up on the sidewalk that seems very welcoming right from the roadway. And I think that would be something that we could kind of incorporate into this plan to make it so that the storefronts have to have more of like a walkable entrance from the sidewalk. And I'm not sure if that's something that we could incorporate into this plan, but I would love to see it happen. And in Barrington, they also had awesome bike lanes that went like behind like the storefronts. So I think it was a train track at one point, but they kind of went behind the strip malls through the trees and they would come link back up. And it was awesome. And then they also had bridges for their bike lanes that would connect. It was totally separate from the road. So, and I think it was from old train tracks, but it was a really cool model that I think would be really neat to follow if we could somehow incorporate that type of thing.
Well, the guidelines for development that mandates a building interacting with a sidewalk that way is a zoning
Yeah, it's plenty.
requirement. And the current, our relatively new zoning regulation has more of that. It's called a performance standard than it used to. But it really depends on private owners redeveloping property.
Even like
That's what
there's a
they-
new
that's what-
bank that's kind of by like Planet Fitness in Groton. And it seems like they're a very new property that looks much nicer and there's like bushes. Like it seems like they followed more of like a beautification standard, but there still was no entrance, that you wouldn't have had to like walk through the entire parking lot to get through. So I would love to just update that plan further, but I don't know or just encourage businesses to do so.
Well, that's the plan of conservation and development to some
To
degree.
some degree, but I think we need to take, if you're interested in going down that path, we need to be taking a look at what is in the current zoning
Okay.
regulations
Okay.
in those areas that you're looking at.
I would be happy to go take some pictures in Barrington and bring them back to add.
Well, a
just
lot of
'cause it
that,
was
when
so cool.
some of those issues, like you said, there was a train track, there probably was actually a train track.
Yeah.
Just like we had the trolley going through here. And a lot of that's the storefronts and stuff that were supporting that train stops have all been disappeared and replaced over the years with housing
Mhm.
rather than maintaining the store frontage
Mhm.
that you can have, right? Because I see that also, if you go to Kingston, you see that.
Yes, similar.
Along their bikeway and stuff.
But even so, I think like some of our strip mall areas in downtown Groton have space behind them that kind of follows like a stream that you could kind of implement a bike lane kind of going behind it and then rejoining traffic. And I think through especially Groton, like by, behind Grasso, Bluff Point, all of that, I think that could be a really cool place to add in bikeable areas.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
So whenever we can add that in. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so I think we've come to the conclusion here. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I will. Okay. A second.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. Good meeting.
Thank you.